Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. So welcome to today's webinar. It's titled Forms and Compliance, Customer Examples. And so this webinar is targeted towards ExpandIT's partners. This is part 2 of the series. In part 1, we showed you how to build various types of forms. And in this part, we're going to review some examples from actual customers and how they use ExpandIT forms to meet their business requirements. So welcome again. My name is Gary Rodriguez. I'm on the marketing team here at ExpandIT. And today we also have Luke Canan, who handles business development here at ExpandIT. And he will be the main presenter in a couple of minutes. So a few notes before we begin. So today's session is recorded, and everyone who registered will get an email with a link to the on-demand version within the next few days. This session will run for about 30 minutes, which includes some time for Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A panel on your RingCentral console, and we will address them towards the end of the presentation. And if for some reason we don't have time to address all the questions in today's live event, please be assured we will follow up with you directly right after the webinar with answers. So the outline for today's webinar is as follows. I will just talk a little bit about ExpandIT, and then we'll go right into why forms are important. Then I will hand it over to Luke to give us some real customer examples, and then we will do a quick review of the key benefits. We'll allow some time for Q&A, and then we will wrap things up. So now just a little bit of background about ExpandIT. ExpandIT has over 20 years of experience as a Microsoft ISV. Has a standard integration to all versions of Microsoft Dynamics. Have over 50,000 daily mobile users, and we have a team in North America for sales, support, and service delivery. And we really focus on working with organizations who perform service and installations and help them maximize their productivity and reduce their administration costs. I'll just go quickly over our main product. So ExpandIT builds a mobile sales and service solution that's of course integrated with Microsoft Dynamics. And there's 3 parts to the solution. There is a portal for end customers. There is a mobile field service solution for mobile technicians who are out in the field. And there's a resource planning board for planners and dispatchers. And there are really 3 key benefits that we focus on with this product. First is to improve operational efficiency. Second is to ensure compliance. And the third is to enhance the customer experience. So why are forms important for service companies? Well, many companies these days need to keep records at every job site they visit for things like government regulations and reporting that's delivered to the customer, or just for internal record keeping. So there's a few key reasons that forms are important. The first is that by having forms handled digitally, this removes the risk of lost or misplaced paperwork. That's especially important for forms that need to be submitted to government. Secondly, digital forms are a lot easier to read than paper forms, so there's no confusion later on. Related to that, having an integrated digital form removes the need for manual data entry. So when transferring from paper to a digital system by the admin person, there are opportunities for errors to happen. And also by removing that, you reduce the workload of your team. The next thing is it's easy to keep records for future reference and tie them to a specific job or customer. This is also useful for subsequent visits by a technician to the same customer. And next, digital forms can be made mandatory for a job. So a technician needs to fill it out before completing a job and moving on to their next site. And finally, forms can be linked to the ERP system for seamless transfer of information. So now I'm going to hand it over to Luke, and he's going to go right into the first of the 3 customer examples.
Thanks, Gary. Hello, everyone. My name is Luke, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about reports today. So the first example I want to discuss is a company we have, and basically what they do is they install water filtration systems in homes in remote areas. So think about, cottages, and homes of that nature, and sort of the middle of nowhere. And they're currently running BC Cloud with ExpandIT Field Service. And one of their key requirements was the ability they wanted to remove or get rid of their paper forms, because they had, a lot of them, and it was a bit of a nuisance and a hassle, not only for them, but also their customers to receive this data that was captured on paper. And so if the customer was to view this data, someone would have to key in this data manually on the computer, right? Someone from the customer, and either send it via email or text it to them or some other way. And you already know the issues with that. So they go out and they install these septic systems, and they also do some post-service as well. And so some of the main issues that they faced regarding capturing data in the field was showing water meter levels to customers. So they take a sample, conduct tests on the water, and then present that data to the customer. So the issue was, how do we transfer that data to the customer? And the solution that we had was to use our inspection form. So they created a form, essentially taking one of their paper forms. We made it digital and easy to read, accessible to the customer, basically 24/7. And so, Gary, if we switch over, I'm actually going to show an example of that. If you can stop sharing your screen, Gary. So this is the report module that we have on the mobile solution. So pretend like we're a field worker. I go out in the field and I'm using my tablet. So this is how our solution would look like in the tablet. And at the bottom, we have our report section. Okay. And here is the example report for that very customer that I was talking about. So they had some yes and no questions, the ability to, they wanted the ability to enter in comments, some text, capture signatures, etc. So for this instance, they had to enter in some data, like some levels. So they would enter that in, and they actually took a picture of the water sample test. And so that was a key requirement for them, and something, the feedback that we got from them, from their customers, was that they couldn't believe how fast and how clear this data was presented to them, because before it was done on paper and it would take, weeks for someone to enter in this, the water filtration sample tests. And by the time they got it, they almost forgot about it. So they were able to receive this data almost immediately. As soon as that test was done, they had a copy of this report. And so they filled out the report and they sent an email to the customer, and that was presented to them immediately as soon as this report was completed. There is another customer I'd like to discuss, and Gary, I'm gonna, if you show this slide for a second. So the second example I want to discuss is a company that's in the construction space, and they work with newly built, homes and home builders, where they modify a newly built home that you just purchased. And if you wanted to upgrade either your cabinets or countertops or flooring, you would work with this company, and they would sort of upgrade the countertops, floors for you. And so before, they were using a completely non-integrated solution, and none of the systems were speaking with each other. And I believe they're on Business Central. and they've been using our solution for, I think, a year or two now. So they would do not only installations, custom installations, but they would also do aftercare service as well. So some of the main issues that they faced was lost paperwork. So they had, I believe they have, 20 or 30 different kinds of reports that they're using through ExpandIT. So they created a bunch of reports. They took everything that they had on paper and made that digital. And so the main issue for them was since they have a large team, I believe they almost had 1,000 field workers out there. So you can imagine if they had to do 5-10 reports per person per day, that's an insane amount of paperwork. So that was an issue. Paperwork was getting lost. They couldn't read the writing when it came back to the office, etc. So there was a lot of the transferring of data from paper to Business Central or to their solution got lost. And also ensuring quality of work and customer satisfaction. So when they completed the installation or service, there were certain steps that had to be checked off, like, did you make sure to clean the floor, etc. Was a customer satisfied with the installation, and they, I think, requested a customer sign off. So those were the issues that they were facing. It was the tons of paperwork, the data transfer loss, and the issue they were having with the quality of work. So with our reporting tool, it allows and forces the field user to make sure that they capture this data and sort of make it mandatory. So essentially, they cannot close out a job unless they've cleaned off the floor and had a customer sign off on it. And I will show you an example of that. So Gary, if you stop showing your screen again. So here's an very example of the report that they had. So you can see we had some yes and no questions, right? Did you make sure to clean the site, etc. And so this was to be filled after installation or after service. And then they would like the field user to then sign off on it. And so again, this ensures that there's no data loss. It forces the field worker to have to complete these questions or have to capture a signature. That way there's no excuse saying, oh, I forgot to clean the floor. Well, you selected yes and you signed off on it. So it puts the responsibility in the hands of the actual field user. Again, and then this could be sent out to whoever. It could be sent out to the customer, or you can type in any email and give a copy of it to somebody. So you can go ahead, save that report, and work on the next one. The last one, which is relevant in these times, Gary, I'm going to switch one more time to you. So this doesn't only apply to this specific company. We're seeing a lot of this across a lot of our customers and clients. But for example, this is a building maintenance company. So they're interacting with the public. So they get this, the service technicians get sent out and they do some building maintenance, cleaning the floors, filling up bathrooms with soap and things like of that nature. So they're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of employees at the office buildings, and what they're using our form for, not only satisfaction forms and inspection forms like what I showed earlier, but they're using it for actually COVID sort of testing. And so this is becoming a government health and safety requirement, right? These reports need to be presented to the government if requested. So if they don't have this data, they can get in a lot of trouble. So a lot of our customers are now implementing or creating this form to capture this data. And I'll show you an example of that. So we're going to switch one more time. So they've made this form mandatory so that a worker cannot start their shift or they cannot clock in before completing this form. So this is the first thing that they see is I have to clear and pass and fill out this COVID health and safety form. So questions like, have you been exposed to COVID? Yes or no? Have you been traveling with the last 14 days, etc. And then they have the mobile users sign off on it, and they've made this mandatory. Okay, they cannot begin the job or the service order until they've completed this form and signed off on it. And then they've saved it, and then that way we can track and have this on file. Because if the government asks or a governing body asks for this data, you need to be able, or your customer needs to be able to present this information, because they can get in a lot of trouble if they don't have this. And if you're doing this on paper, if things get lost, people forget to fill things out, can't read the writing, etc. So I think this is, a lot of our customers have been creating this type of form for their employees, and we're just seeing more and more of that. So what I've showed you so far is an example of sort of the capability of our forms. I mean, these are just some of our customers here. I mean, there's so many different other kinds of forms, right? Where we have inspection and health and safety and customer satisfaction. You could even have a work summary form, right? Presenting to the customer, here's the time that I registered today. Here are the materials that I've consumed today. Can you please sign off on it, confirming that I've completed the work? So these reports can be completely dynamic, and essentially whatever you can do on paper, we can recreate digitally, and more, because we can attach documents and pictures, and have specific, we can make these reports even dynamic and have specific rules in place. And I'm going to show you that in a second, where if you had an example of a customer saying, present to the customer, are you satisfied with today's service, yes or no? And if the answer was no, it forces the user to put in a comment. And I'm going to show you that now. So I will share my screen, and I'm going to take you to our report module. So what I'm showing you now is sort of the admin panel for the person that's going to be creating the reports and sort of maintaining them. So here's a long list of different reports that I have, but I want to show you an example of our capability of making the reports dynamic. So here's an example of something that I've created. And what's great is that, things to add here is that we can link specific reports to specific tasks or specific service items. If you can see here, this report specifically is linked to all service orders, but like I said, I can link them to specific tasks or specific service items. And so here I have a couple of questions. And let's go to a preview of this, and I'll show you how these reports can be dynamic. And questions, it could force the user to answer or input data based off another data point. So for example, are you happy with service today? You might present this to the customer post-service. And if the answer is yes, then that's great. The customer signs off on it and you go about your day. But let's say you have a report, for example, is that, are you happy with service today? Or if the answer is no, then it forces the user to enter in a second data point. So it's forcing me to enter in a comment, which is great. Now we can make these reports extremely dynamic, and you can have data points on top of data points that are linked to other data points. And this is a new piece of functionality that we just released, I think, within the last 2 weeks, because we've had this demand from a lot of customers, a lot of our clients. They've given us this feedback, and now we've rolled this out into our standard solution. So these are sort of again, the new features and functionality that we're constantly pushing out within our solution. So we're excited to have this functionality available to our customers. And so if I now exit from here, go back to the report, I can actually show it to you how it looked like on the mobile client. So that still was an example of how it would look like in the sort of in the admin portal, where the person creating the reports would view it. But if I want to view it on the mobile side, this is how it would be presented. So the questions are exactly the same. It's just the user interface is a little bit different, more user-friendly, because we're presenting this to the customer or the person out in the field. So again, yes and no. Are you happy with today's service? If the answer is no, then it forces me to write a comment. And then I'll capture signature. Okay. Gary, I'm going to hand things back over to you, where you might have some other questions. But yeah, I'm going to switch over back to you now.
Perfect. Thank you, Luke. Thanks for showing us those real customer examples. So now as a review, let's just go through the 5 main value points for using digital forms. So there's really 5 main things that we talked about. So number 1, the main benefit is that you can instantly capture data out in the field. And so of course that amounts to reduced chances of loss of data in transfer and reduced errors as well. The next thing is that it's easy to fill out these forms and does not require a long learning curve for your technicians who are out in the field. Third thing is professionalism. So it's better for customers to see forms on a digital format. There's no messy forms on paper, and there's no incomplete data when they receive reports. The next thing is the integration with the ERP. So that, of course, is important in terms of transferring data over and keeping records. And as we learned today, again, they're easy to create, so you don't need to be a software developer in order to do it. So in terms of next steps, really there are 3 main things you want to do next. First thing is, of course, speak with your customer, and you want to identify their pain points. And once you've figured out what are the real pain points that your customer is facing, that's when you can schedule a meeting with us. We can do a discovery session and present the solution to you and your customer. So now we're going to have a little bit of time for Q&A. So we do have a couple questions that have come in here. Okay, so the first one here is, how does information get transferred into BC Business Central? So Luke, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, so the actual reports are stored within ExpandIT, but can be linked to Business Central. So, and we can basically host these reports wherever the customer pleases, most people are using SharePoint, for instance. So within Business Central, that service order, that job, there's a link to that very report that would open up in, let's say, a separate file server like SharePoint. Or it could be accessible through the approval module within ExpandIT. And then we also have, for the actual end customer, if they want to review these reports, we have a service portal as well, where customers can view those reports online 24/7. So they don't even have to ask anybody from the service company. They can have access to these reports and search through all previous service that was done for them and have access to the reports and download them and view them 24/7. So that's the most common way.
Okay, thanks, Luke. And we have, I guess we'll take one more question. So I think you've partially answered this one already. Can a custom form be created by the end customer, or does ExpandIT have to create it?
So yes, we have our own report building tool for our end customers, right? So that they can create the forms that I just built. So those forms that I showed you were built by our end customers. So you do not need any development experience at all. It's pretty simple. It's sort of drag and drop and typing in the question and saying, yes, I want this question to be yes or no, etc. Now, of course, ExpandIT can create these forms for you if you'd like. But a lot of our customers are using our own report building tool. It's really, really simple, really easy to build your own reports.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Luke. So that concludes our webinar for today. If you have any further questions, our contact information is here on the screen. So you can feel free to email us anytime with any further questions that have come up. We will also have the recordings from today. They'll be emailed out to you, so you can share them or rewatch them at your own convenience. So you should receive those in a few days. And we will also have another partner webinar coming up in about 2 weeks. So the invites with all of the details for that will go out soon. So you'll receive that in your email inbox again. So thank you everyone for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.